Hey guys, welcome to a new format, a new show here in Untitled Music. Today we're talking a little bit about a top 10 list. The top 10 list is for the Spotify playlist that we've been putting out every month since January. There's a great trumpet player and former student of mine, and he has been working for Untitled Music on and off for the last year or 2 years, maybe even 3 years, and been doing a lot of great work for us, and has taken over since January the This Is Jazz playlist. The This Is Jazz playlist is on Outside in Music's Spotify account, and you can find the links to that on our socials. You can find the links to the Spotify playlist on Facebook. You can just search on Spotify Outside in Music and find us and go to the playlist section. But we're talking here all about the 10 records from May 2018 that came out and were new releases and that caught our attention. And so Alan and I are talking a bit about those records and where to check, who's on them, and how to check them out, and why we thought they were interesting. And I think it's super fun and informative, and it's a little bit of a longer episode, but I'm really looking forward to these going forward. We weren't sure how the format would turn out, but it was a fun conversation, and I think we're going to keep it going. So let us know in the comments below what you're thinking about. If you want to submit anything for the playlist, go ahead and send it to info@outsideinmusic.com. This is a Spotify-based playlist, so it has to be on Spotify to be considered. If it's not on Spotify, it doesn't mean that your record's not great. It just means that we can't feature it on our Spotify playlist. So without further ado, here comes a conversation with Alan Blanchard, and we're talking about This Is Jazz playlist on Spotify from Outside in Music. So out on Thursday, May 31st, we have our latest edition of the This Is Jazz playlist, and Alan Blanchard is here to talk a little bit about some of the tracks that he chose for this month's edition of the playlist. What's going on, Alan? How are you?
Good. How about you, Nick?
I'm doing good. So why don't you see if you can give us a little bit of a rundown of what's happening this month and talk about some of the tracks. Maybe you can start. How many did you pick this month for the playlist?
I think I did 10.
All right, so let's see if we can go backwards, kind of do like a old school countdown kind of situation here.
Okay.
Obviously, this is your opinion of some of the new releases that came out, and just to give some people some context, could you tell people a little bit about yourself, where you're based out of, and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, I'm currently, doing my master's at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. I did my undergrad at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. And I'm just, studying school. I've, just practicing and writing where I can. I certainly come from a more, traditional straight ahead mindset, I guess you could put it. As far as my playing history and what I generally like. So that helps, people understand, I guess, where my biases are.
Totally. Yeah, that's great. So I know you've been doing this for a couple months, and people may or may not have checked it out, but it's on Spotify. It's called the This Is Jazz Today playlist. You can find it if you just go to the search bar on Spotify, type in This Is Jazz Today, type in Outside Music. You'll find it, or just, check out our social channels. You can find a link there. So was there a lot of new releases this month, or was it kind of slim pickings?
I think it's kind of died down a little bit. Around March and April was where I remember there was one time I had to ask you. I was like, hey, Nick, I got like 15 or 16 tracks. Is that cool? And you're like, no, it's trying to sum it down a little bit. So, it's kind of like the beginning of the year right now, where there weren't ton of new releases, especially those by, I guess you could say larger names or something that were easier to find online.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's just because the nature of when people like to put stuff out, so it's available for summer tours and summer festival season and all that sort of stuff. But all right, well, let's jump right in. So what do you got for number 10?
Number 10, I have this track. It's the title track of the album, "Music Is Life," in parentheses, "Live It," and it's off of Dave McMurray's album, a great tenor sax player. And I was drawn to this one because it's definitely not inside my normal wheelhouse,
Uh-huh.
but it fit criteria that I'm always listening to when I try and listen to something in jazz or whatnot. And that's basically is like how it feels, you know, how the groove is set up. And it was really interesting because this has like a lot of a Detroit or like Motown type feel to it. You know, based upon like his band and where he's from and whatnot. And the entire album is like this nod to Detroit. And so it just happened that I was listening through, and this one caught my eyes. You know, it's a pianoless album, so it's literally just bass, drums, and saxophone. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was great. He does a lot of stuff on it that's more rhythmic ideas rather than necessarily, you know, playing in and out of all this language.
Oh, sure. Nice. And that looks like it's a Blue Note record based on the cover. So that's cool. I don't.
Yeah, I think he was on a Blue Note.
Yeah, I see some of these other records of his here, but I am not super familiar, so I'll have to check that one out. So let's keep on moving. So number 9, what did you have for number 9?
Number 9, you know, I'm a trumpet player, so I'm always trying to find new trumpet players that, you know, aren't the big names and whatnot. And there's this guy who's been up in Boston forever playing at this local jazz club, Wally's, which is historically well known for many years. So it's Jason Palmer on, he put out 2 volumes, Live at Wally's Volume 1 and Volume 2, which was a live record he recorded, I think, in 2016. It's just now getting released. You know, it was a great tune. He stretches out a lot on it, which is cool because you can hear, you know, his virtuosic playing, and he really just has a great technical facility over the horn. And so I picked the tune off the record, Stop, Drop, and Roll, partially because it had a really killing trumpet solo, I thought. But it's, you know, it's a great band led up front by trumpet and tenor sax, and then guitar and Rhodes, which is kind of cool because through the record sometimes the sound of the guitar and the Rhodes kind of blend together. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely it's difficult sometimes pulling them apart, which gives a really nice dense sound behind it, you know, because it's like almost the guitar player, the whatever amps or sound that it chose for is less of like that hollow body guitar sound, so it's a little bit more electric. And then of course, you know, Fender Rhodes is definitely more electric, so that gives like a really nice palette for Jason Palmer to play over. And honestly, in some ways, he kind of reminded me of another great trumpet player, Theo Crocker, which I'm a huge fan of. So that's why that one stuck out to me. And I think he's a great find for me personally.
Where did you first come across Jason and his music?
It was kind of like going through the wormholes of YouTube videos from one trumpet player to another trumpet player. I think it started, I actually found Jason Palmer before this month, and I was, you know, on YouTube just typing in some standard and going through like all the related videos to try and find different versions on it. And, you know, I always want to hear a trumpet player playing the standard, at least in some way.
Sure.
So he came up with like a bootleg video someone had caught at the club. And so when it was going around here, it was like Spotify suggested, oh, you've checked out, you know, Jason Palmer. And it just so happened that he had a new release this month. So it was a great find overall.
Nice. Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure he's still based in Boston. A lot of these guys on here that I see on this discography here are all Boston guys. And so it's cool that you're able to find Jason, and he's done a lot of really cool things. But okay, cool. So let's keep on rolling. Let's go with number 8 here. What'd you have?
Okay, so for number 8, I picked Tia Fuller's new record, Diamond Cut. And off this, I picked a great tune that I personally discovered through Coltrane, and that's where I fell in love with it, Soul Eyes.
Sure.
You know, for me, and again, my biases, I've always had a issue with finding alto players who I'm like very obsessed with their tone, because with a lot, you know, it's bright and whatnot. It's just not the timbre that my ear normally gravitates to. But you know, my friend had been talking about Tia Fuller so much, and Tia Fuller, and they're talking about if going to go see Tia Fuller, and so finally I checked out Tia Fuller, and I just absolutely loved her sound. And so I was checking out this new record, and it's completely stacked. It's produced by Terry Lynn Carrington, the great drummer, who actually played on this track. Dave Holland is on this track. And then there's a great guitar player, Adam Rogers. I'm not familiar with him, but, he sounds killing. And it's just, they set up, between Dave Holland and Terry Lee Carrington, they set up this great groove and foundation of able to, go one direction, but, at the drop of a needle, go some other direction, while Tia Fuller just plays over this tune beautifully. And like I said, not being someone that listens to a lot of alto saxophone, I was very caught off guard and, just loved it completely.
Nice. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've checked out Tia. I saw her somewhere here in the city a while back, but I'll have to check it out again. But as a side note, Adam Rogers, you should definitely know about Adam Rogers. He's plays with like Chris Potter, and he used to play with Michael Brecker, and just a whole crazy history of stuff that he's done. So he's definitely somebody worth knowing about.
Yeah, that's why I love doing this. I always find these people that I just don't know.
Right.
And it helps me make an educated decision on like where to guide my listening and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that you're finding some people you don't know about. That's always awesome.
Yeah.
So let's keep on rolling. So we have Tia Fuller, Diamond Cut, and now on to what number are we on here? 10, 9, 8, 7.
Yeah, so 7 is off of Tim Warfield's new album, Jazzland, and it's this great Donald Brown tune called Theme for Malcolm. So I have been following Tim Warfield and whatnot since he came down here 2 years ago, and he performed Love Supreme with us. And while he was down here, we got to talking a lot and discussing about his history of playing and whatnot, and when he was with Nicholas Payton. And now he's very commonly sing in front of the band with Terrell Stafford, who's a great trumpet player, someone I'm very fond of in his playing. So it's a pleasure to see this album come out with, again, Terrell Stafford in it and a great band. There's actually no bass player, but instead it's just brought up by Pat Biondi. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Yeah, that's playing Hammond D3. And so that was cool because, it's not your regular piano. It's filling the role of both the bass and that. So organ, definitely a plus whenever that happens. And it's just all centered in what Tim Warfield was talking about while he's here, where he always focuses on the groove of a song and the different directions the groove can be taken, which was great seeing, being able to listen to something and see, like, practically this is what he was talking about when he was here with us. And all in all, great solos from Tim Warfield on tenor and soprano sax on the album. He played soprano on this track. Terrell Stafford, bad dude, great solos on that. It's a great band all the way around.
That's really interesting. Is there anything more specifically you could talk about in terms of what you meant or what he meant or how you perceived it about like expanding the groove or different directions with the groove and how you felt that was happening on this track?
Yeah, he gave so when he was down here, he gave like a master class of saxophones, and I came in to set it, and his big thing was he said that when he partially from when he was playing with Nicholas Payton and when he was coming up, he always tried to figure out different ways to approach things. So he even had some people up in the room, and they would play through a melody, but they could only play 4 notes of the melody, and then it would be the next person would pick up with the next 4 notes of the melody, etc. So he did that, and then I think if I remember right, he took a simple tune like Now's the Time or something, and he was experimenting with trying to have certain people put like underlying rhythms underneath it, whether it was like a dotted quarter note or something else. And it's kind of cool because to me, it came off with the idea of like having an ostinato, like rhythmic figure in your mind when you're approaching a tune, which I've come to find I enjoy in a lot of people that I listen to when they do it. It's found my way into the compositions that I try and do. So it was really good, and I like that he takes this very big picture approach to playing a tune rather than getting so caught up in just going through and playing, you know, whatever harmonies and whatnot. You know, he obviously plays the changes, but having a more macro perspective on the tune and the general shape of it and the rhythmic ideas of it is what really sticks to me about his playing, and even his compositions when he was here and we were playing some of his originals. Nice.
Well, that's really great. And it's not all the time that, you know, you get to actually see it in the real world or in a real situation. It's things that, you know, people talk about when they're educating as well. So that's really cool.
Right.
Let's keep on rolling. So we're up to number 6 now.
Yeah, so number 6 is definitely far out of my wheelhouse of anything I would normally come across, which was really interesting. It's this great album by Dave Holland that he just released called Uncharted Territories. I personally picked the first track on it, Thought on Earth, but this is like a 2 CD, 23-track album. Okay. And they supposedly, if I understand correctly, they just went in and recorded this album over like 3 days or something, and it didn't have it was free jazz, as you want to call it, or there's no this is how we're going to go with it. And you can see that when they're going through the tracks. Like some of the tracks are just called tenor, piano, bass 2 or T2, and so you know they're explaining that breaks down. It's tenor, bass, piano, Tuesday, take 2. And it's just interesting how they approach it. It starts off with, you know, Dave Holland and Evan Parker playing tenor, which are the two main voices, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. The bass kind of takes on a present role as a melodic figure, and they're kind of trading off this more spiritual type approach. And it kind of reminded me almost a little bit of like when John Coltrane kind of got into his more spiritual side, like around Love Supreme and past that. And then so there's percussion played by Ches Smith, and then Craig Taborn is playing piano, and it was really cool because they start off the track with Ches Smith actually playing, I think it's bells, a bell kit, and it's that mixed with the piano is like this cascading effect going behind it, and then from there it just kind of goes, you know, more spontaneous, and then it'll come back for a little bit into a quasi like form or groove, I guess you could put it, and then it'll go back, you know, right back out, and then it'll come back in, and it's kind of like this never-ending just like wave of ideas at risk of sounding cheesy or anything, and it was very entrancing almost to try and follow and hear where they were going. And it was, you know, it was something that I didn't expect myself to be that much into, and something that I haven't been much into in the past, but you know, it definitely caught my eye, and I got to go back and finish listening to this album because it's very long.
Yeah,
but it's great. It's great. Definitely recommend it for anyone that's trying to check out maybe what more of a free jazz vibe might be, and put in a modern context where they worry more maybe about textures and thematic ideas rather than necessarily a strict form.
Sure. Nice. That's a good breaking up of things. And so now I see above that number 5 some pretty famous names here.
Oh yeah, we are back to straight ahead, I guess you could call it a little bit, with the great Fred Hersch Trio album from Live in Europe that he just released. It's this entire album is based off of Thelonious Monk, which, you know, here at Florida State we study a lot of Thelonious Monk, and so it just happened that this past year in an ensemble I'd been in, we had been working on We See a Lot, and so that was the tune that caught my eye, and was listening to it because you know, it almost has like it's kind of like a mix between Monk and a piano trio, and almost like the sensitivity of a Keith Jarrett piano trio.
Sure. Where stuff
can change so rapidly, but they're all so quick to catch on and take it somewhere else. You know, and I was listening to it, and the first A sections there, they're doing it not normal, but it's pretty self-evident. Like, okay, this is one way to interpret it. And then they get to the bridge and they just change it so drastically with what Fred Hersch is doing behind it with his left hand. And that's, that kind of caught my attention just listening to it, and where they take We See and then it turns into something that just doesn't sound like We See, but then it always comes back to We See. And, I've been a huge fan of listening to piano trios and smaller groups like that, because of it might lend itself a little bit easier to try and do those type of moves in a context. So yeah, great album. And it's always great to hear new interpretations on this, repertoire that we see so standardized, or that's become so popular in so many different interpretations of it.
Totally. Did you happen to see or find out where this was recorded? I just see it's live in Europe.
I haven't. I know that they were on tour for a little bit in Europe, so I don't know if it was several concerts or if they recorded, and then took the best takes or whatnot. I didn't find that exactly, but I just know it was from live in Europe, like the album says.
Cool. Very, very cool. So now on to number 4.
Yeah. So number 4 is Joey Alexander. This 14-year-old.
Oh, he's 14 now. Okay.
Yeah. A lot younger than me. Child prodigy, or whatever, how you want to put it. It's off his new album, Eclipse. And it just so happened that the track that I picked to, mostly because he's 14, is called 14 on the record.
Oh, okay.
And it features a great tenor saxophone player that I've been a huge fan of, Joshua Redman, on it. And then, the rest of the band is Ruben Rogers on bass and Eric Harland on drums. What more could you want?
It's a pretty good band.
Yeah, certainly pretty good band. And so, I thought it was interesting because I kind of see it with it being called 14 as maybe a comparison to how busy his life has been as a 14-year-old.
Sure.
It's a little bit quicker than a lot of the other stuff, but it's just incredible. The entire album, there's tons of tunes I could have picked off here that go different sides of the spectrum. He has Blackbird on here, a reference to the Beatles in that sense. The very thought of you, again, with Joshua Redman on here. He has a tune called Bali, which is more influential of the Bali culture, and then he has another tune that's more that you would see in a church setting, in a church type playing, and it's just it just blows my mind for what experience he has and how, really how young he is, and he's just able to go from such opposite sides of the spectrum. He doesn't have just a small wheelhouse, and it's not predictable. It's not like I'm seeing him cut out some formula and doing it. And obviously other great people are thinking the same too, or you wouldn't be having, Eric Harland, Ruben Rogers, Josh Redman on your album. Exactly. So it's a real enjoyment to listen to.
Excellent. I haven't checked out this record yet. I've checked out some of the older Joey Alexander, but I'll have to hear this one. And how about number 3?
All right, so number 3 is Eddie Henderson's new record, Be Cool. I picked, again, another tune off there that I had learned about through John Coltrane, Naima. And I think this record is off of Smoke Sessions. Mm-hmm. So the band is fantastic, man. It has a great, another saxophone player I love, Donald Harrison. Kenny Barron, who's one of my favorite pianists. Essay, I think that's how you pronounce his name. And then Mike Clark on drums. So, man, just without even looking at the entire band, just listening to the tune for face value, alto solo, kill. Trumpet solo, kill. Like piano solo. And that's something that I think is really big deal for me when listening to a lot of these records is the energy the same throughout all the solos? Is everyone bringing it to the table? Is it not just a record like this one person is killing the game and then everyone else is like, oh, okay, And so they set up this whole vibe with it. And it's just interesting too, because, you know, a lot of these guys share, I don't think they were in the band at the same time, but a lot of these guys share learning and being a part of Herbie Hancock's stuff. Eddie Henderson with his Mwandishi band. Mike Clark, if I remember, joined the band shortly after Rocket, I think.
He's on Headhunters.
Yeah. So like it's interesting seeing how this someone else that's mutual but they weren't a part of together has influenced the way that they're going to play together then on a different album, you know? And again, it's just a great tune. I partially biased because I'm always trying to check out trumpet players and whatnot. And Eddie Henderson is a bad dude, and it's great to see him release new songs and new records with other great musicians, you know. And you know, always a fan of Kenny Barron on here, who plays great. And then I don't really know what else to say, man. It's really just the solos and the instrumentalists on here, and they're able to get together and put together such a vibe. And then when it's their time to shine, I mean, they shine. There's no other way to put it.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. All right, we're almost there. Let's jump up to number 2 now. From a new.
All right, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so the number 2 is off of this record with an interesting name, Seymour Reads the Constitution. It's from the Brad Mehldau Trio, and it's their take on the famous tune Beatrice. It's off of None Such Records, I think. Yeah, so I'm always a huge fan of Brad Mehldau. I really got caught up in his playing with his Live in Marciac album, and all of his stuff. And I'm originally with like a lot of what he does solo piano wise, but his trio is again stacked. It's, you know, Brad Mehldau on piano, Jeff Ballard on drums, Larry Grenadier on bass. And personally, I love the tune Beatrice. I first heard it from Joe Henderson, The State of the Tenor, live at the Village Vanguard, where he starts off doing it duo with Ron Carter. Great tune. And from there, I've only checked out tons of other versions of it. And Brad Mehldau, you know, his way of phrasing a melody and implying or even putting other harmonies underneath the melody as transition chords and going from one way to another is just what blows my mind, and how he can take, you know, a tune that you think you know very well and put changes on it that don't even sound that much different, but it gives the tune this whole other sound. And often a lot of the tunes that draw my appeal from him, he gives like this dark and rich harmony underneath it, and they just do a great job doing this and taking it in that Brad Mehldau way, where they start, you know, applying other rhythm ideas and very intense playing but then they bring it back to such simplicity at the end. And overall, just a real pleasure to listen to, and a great interpretation of that famous song.
Nice. Did you happen to find out any of the story behind the title? Because I really need to go and investigate this.
I don't. I know I talked to you about it. Yeah. Seems that Brad Mehldau always has very interesting albums or like covers and titles and whatnot. And I kept trying to Google, like, you know, what is this?
Yeah.
I think, and I might be wrong, of course, but I think when I hear Seymour Reads the Constitution, I think of like one of those children's books where it's like so-and-so does something for the first time. And so I'm wondering if he thinks it's because people are becoming more aware and are starting to take more of take it more upon themselves to really be aware of like what's in the Constitution and what their rights are as an individual. Because even on the album cover, it's like a shopping cart of a bunch of like law books and historical books like that. So I think that's I think that's what it is. He's kind of making a reference to how people are becoming self-aware of more of what they are owed as I mean, as people and whatnot. But again, I could be far off. But that's just what my head gravitates to when I see something like that. You know, because I remember growing up and reading like or seeing these kids' books that were like, you know, Billy bakes cookies or whatever for the first time, you know, and all this stuff. So I think that's kind of the play on it.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. Amazing. So people can go and investigate that and make their own educated decisions there. And now we've come all the way from number 10 to the last one, number 1. And so what did you pick there?
Yeah, I picked Kenny Barron Quintet's new record, Concentric Circles. You know, I'm a huge fan of Kenny Barron. He put out a trio record in 2016 with the same trio on this, Jonathan Blake on drums, and I hope I can pronounce this correctly, Kiyoshi Kitakawa on bass. Mm-hmm. And so that was great. It's called Book of Intuition. And then he adds to this, and he says that he's been wanting to work with a quintet for a long time because he just loves writing. You know, and with a quintet, he can write more. So he brings in Mike Rodriguez on trumpet and Dana Stevens on sax. And the tune I picked was Blue Waters off of here. And, man, it just has literally everything I look for in a tune. Great groove there. It's constantly centered with, like, it just feels good. You know, there's a great vibe. It's very bluesy and a soulful tune, which, you know, is a personal preference of mine. And, man, again, biased, but the trumpet solo on here is killing. I remember when I first listened to it, I didn't know everybody on the record. But, man, it reminded me of Terrell Stafford, who is someone that I'm a very big fan of, and I've checked out a lot of his stuff. And I went back to find out it was this guy, Mike Rodriguez. And, man, it is a great record. It has, you know, there's been some people that come out and they say, you know, well, Jazz Today doesn't swing or whatever. You know, don't worry about that. This record is great. It has the best for all the people that want the straight ahead. It has that vibe. It has the people that are more fan to the modern jazz and to the stuff that isn't necessarily straight ahead swing. And it does all of that while staying true to just being, you know, bringing the blues, bringing like soulful playing into the music and being very melodic with what they're doing. And it just seems that they were all so much on the same page as how they felt they wanted this album to be perceived and how, you know, how they wanted to approach each tune. And it's a real treat to listen to when a band has, you know, all is coming together for the same goal and the same thought on songs rather than bringing their own perspectives to it. You know, that's great. But it's cool when they're all pitching in towards this shared common idea, because then you're getting different perspectives approaching the same idea. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. That's amazing.
So, yeah, definitely a great album. It's on Blue Note, and, yeah, just completely blows you away. That's why I put it, you know, at number 1 this week.
Nice. I think it's actually on Decca Records. That's what it says here. Those are good. It does look like a Blue Note cover though, so they're definitely going for that vibe there. And so that's the top 10 for this is for May, right? For May 2018. Yeah. And I'm sure I remember looking at this maybe a week ago, and the tracks were in a different order, so it's not necessarily that like one is better than the next, but it's 10 great tracks that Alan kind of curated this month. I know you said you were toying back and forth between Brad Mehldau or Eddie Henderson or Kenny Barron for that number 1 slot. So I'm glad that you found that. I'm glad you found Mike Rodriguez, because he's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks Alan for sharing some of your thoughts on these records, and we'll be back again next month to share June's releases with everybody.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me do it.
Of course.